All right, everybody. Nice to see you. I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive here on the Haydn E minor example that we did, the one that goes like the whatever it is. I'm not going to do it. We'll have plenty of time to hear that. We're off to a great start. Anyway, part of the reason I wanted to jump into this is I really want to unpack the way, number one, that we want to analyze some of the pivot chord stuff, but also I really want to get another look at just analyzing piano music to be sure that we're all really comfortable with that. So this could go a little long. It's hard to always conceptualize how to do this kind of thing in this format that we're in right now. I sort of chose a different way to do it initially, but I want to just do this fully, do this the real full way that we would do it in class. And so we're going to talk through the analysis of this just so that everybody's clear with what's going on. Obviously, the thing I'm missing is your immediate reactions, so I'm not getting that in the moment kind of interaction with you all, which is super, super helpful whenever I'm doing something like this. But regardless, I think this is going to be really helpful. So let's sort of go right into the music here. So this is what we're looking at. This should look fairly familiar. And so what you can see is that I've notated it in finale, and I left an empty staff below where we're going to fill in the harmonization here. So we got all this, And so that's the music. Like I said, right at the top. You should remember this. It's the... Right, that guy. So this is what we're looking at. So let's jump right into this. So first and foremost, let's just get some of the piano analysis stuff out of the way to make sure we're all really comfortable with that. So we talked about this before, but let's jump right in and focus on how do we decide what of all of this mess that's on the screen we're going to actually try to include in our understanding of what the chord is. And so there's two things to say here. Number one is we absolutely want to start always with piano music by looking at the left hand. And so if we look right at the beginning here, the left hand has this sort of repeated pattern in the first measure here. So the thing I want to say is our first question for figuring out chords is always, are we looking at one note or one chord per measure, or are we looking at multiple chords per measure? And what we can see here is, even though we're not sure exactly what's going on here because there's a bunch of notes, we can see that the pattern in the first half of the measure is the same as in the second half. So we can pretty safely assume that there's only one chord in this measure. So that's really nice. But the next thing for us to do is say, okay, well, we think there's only one chord. I put in the title here. This is the Haydn E minor thing. So I'm just going to write down here that we're in E minor, just so that we remember. This is kind of down here at the bottom is where I'm going to put the analysis that we do. So we know we're in E minor, and we can look here, and we've got an E, we've got a B, we've got a G. That's good, but then we could say, yeah, but look, there's all this other craziness here. But the beauty is, look, we've got E, B, G, but then here, what's this? B. Oh, we've already got one of those. E, we've already got one. B, we got one. G, we got one. B, we got one. So even though there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 individual notes in the measure, there's only 3 different notes in the left hand. E, G, B. So if I put that down here, if I put E, G, B like this as a quarter note, that should hopefully look a lot more like a chord that we're familiar with as well, right? That should look a lot more like something that we could analyze than what we've been looking at before. And like we said, the second half of this measure is the exact same. So I might be tempted to do something like this and label that there's 2 different chords there, but really this whole measure, look, I could just basically put it as a half note. So what I'm doing down here, I'll label this. I'm basically doing what we would call a reduction. I'm taking I'm going to put that over here. This is our reduction. This is the actual piano part. This is our reduction. We are reducing what's in the piano part down to its sort of essential elements. We're not worried about that. We're not worried about the melody for the most part, right? There's going to be places where that's helpful, but we're really mostly trying to reduce the music down to its essential, fundamental, structural aspects, right? Haydn chose that he wanted to have that rhythm, but, you know, he could have made this like a more oom-pa-pa-pa. And I mean, I could get the accordion out if that's the way we want to go. I think this would sound great like that. But anyway, right? That's the rhythm. But the rhythm that the left hand is doing doesn't change anything about the fact that this is a one chord. Sort of got the cart ahead of the horse there. So let me start analyzing that. I sort of mentioned this. This is going to be kind of long, and I'm going to basically just not worry about time here. So there's going to be moments where it just takes me a little while to get stuff going. So here's a one chord. Look, I did it. That's a one chord, E, G, B, right there. And that's that whole first measure. If I wanted to, I could come up here into the right hand and I could say, okay, the melody, there's 4 different notes, G, A, B, E. But does that really matter? No. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sort of say, look, first beat. Oops, this is what always happens. I forget which of my keyboards here is actually connected to finale. So right on the beginning, there's a quarter note G, and then on beat 2, that's basically what's going on. Because what's that A doing? It's a passing tone, right? It's passing between G and B, which are chord tones. So I'm not gonna reduce the melody down throughout this whole thing. I'm just gonna kind of only mention it when it's really critical, but just to show you how the melody, even though it's not the most important, it still matches up with what the harmony, what the chord is saying. So let's get into this second measure here, and let's say, okay, we've been saying, let's look at the left hand first, and let's see what we've got. So we've got, again, this sort of thing that looks like there's a lot. Right? It's 8 different notes. But is it actually 8 different notes? No, it's 8 notes, but how many different notes are there in the left hand here? There's F sharp. Right? So let me just start this. I'm going to change this how I'm doing this down here, but just to get it going. So I got F sharp, right? I got B, then I got A, then B. Okay, so I don't need to write that. Then F sharp again. We've already got one of those. B, A, B. Okay, so again, look, there's only 3 notes. So let me sort of change that. And like we said, the first half of the measure is the exact same as the second. Right? So I am not at all concerned with the fact that the rhythm is going, because there's only one idea there. It's F sharp, A, B. Now, here's where we run into an issue. Is B, F sharp, A, should I sort of give it away? Basically, is that a full chord? Can I stack any of these notes as the root and give myself a really clear chord? Actually, let me do this up. No, I'll do it down here. Yeah. So I've got F sharp, right? F sharp. I've got A. I've got B. Is that a triad? No. Those are not a third away from one another all the way up, right? F sharp is a third away from A. Awesome. But for this to be an F sharp chord, what would that third note need to be? It wouldn't be B. It would be C of some kind. We don't have one of those. Okay, so that means F sharp isn't the root. What about A? Is A the root of this chord? If I take A, what note would I need to be a third above A? Have to be some kind of C, like an ACE chord? Well, we don't have that. What about B? What would it be if B was the root of this chord? What's the third above B? Some kind of D. Then we get F sharp. then we get A. So look, B, F sharp, A. We're just missing some kind of D note, but here is where the right hand can actually help us. Because while the left hand is F sharp, B, A, B, the right hand does have a D sharp. And so D sharp is the kind we get. So if this is a B, D sharp, F sharp, A chord, because up here in the melody, we have D sharp. I think this is the one I want. Nope, not the one I want. Let's go up an octave. Let me write D, and I'm going to change that E flat, D sharp. Look, boom. So now I've got B, D sharp, F sharp, A. And if B's the root, then what is going to be the Roman numeral in E minor? It's going to be 5, right? So there's my 5. Do I need to add anything else to this? Yes, I do, because B is not in the bass. B is the root, so it's a 5 chord, but B is not in the bass. Which part of this chord is in the bass? It's F sharp, and F sharp is the 5th of the chord. So this is sort of strange. If the 5th of the chord is in the bass and it's a triad, we call it a 6-4 chord. But we just saw this is a 7th chord. So what's our sort of inversion symbol for a second inversion 7th chord? This is going to be a 5. It's going to be a 5, 4. Ooh, let's see if this is working. No, it's not. I'm in the wrong font. Let me fix this. It's 5, 4, 3 is what I'm trying to get at here. Let's go down here. Finale numerics, because this here is a 5. Oh, it keeps happening. This drives me crazy, people. I'm telling you right now. There is no rhyme or reason to why it changes. Good. 5, 4, 3. We did it. Look at that 5, 4, 3 chord. Awesome. Now, there's nothing for me to go forward to, so I'm going to get away from there. So we got 1, right, to 5, 4, 3. Remember, we needed the D sharp from the right hand. So, lesson number 1, when do we consult the right hand? When the left hand is inconclusive. If the left hand doesn't give us all the notes that we're expecting, doesn't spell a full chord for us, right? Because remember, if we just look at the left hand, we wouldn't have known that D sharp was in this chord. We needed to consult the right hand to figure out that there was a D sharp in that chord. Thankfully, we did, so life's good. But okay, so we got that. Now, let's go to the next measure. This left hand here, this should be pretty easy because we've already seen this pattern. What do we call it when it was E, B, G, B? Called it a 1 chord. But the big question in this measure is it the same that we've seen? Is that 1 chord, which is the 1 chord, going to last the whole measure? It's not. And we can tell because, look, it's not the same pattern on the second half of the measure. So this E, G, B thing is just going to be on the first beat of this measure. And then we've got to look here to figure out what's on the second beat. We got D sharp, we've got B, F sharp, and then look, B repeats. What do we do with repeating notes? We don't worry about them. I got D sharp, F sharp, B. So let's throw that down there. I'm going to change the spelling. This is just finale being stupid. There we go. Nice. So I got that. Now, let's figure out what's going on. We're pretty sure, I would hope, we're pretty sure. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right font before I make a fool out of myself. Watch, it's going to be in the right font. Yep, I knew it. I knew it. So we're in a 1 chord, and then we get here. This is what do we think the root of this chord is? We've had this sort of set of notes. We've got a D sharp, an F sharp, and a B. Where have we had that set of notes already? Look right here, B, D sharp, F sharp. So that's a 5. Awesome. But it's 5 what? 5, 6. Why is it 5, 6? Because the third D sharp is in the bass. All right. Now look, here we go again. Mamma mia. We could do like a, right? Why not? That's basically Haydn, right? If I put that on a harpsichord, right, I could just do like. This is what I'm doing. That's what you're here for, right? I can tell. That's what you're here for. Okay, so we've got this same shape again. E, G, B, G. So we know that's a 1 chord. So I'm just going to throw that down here. Same notes that we've had. And just like the previous measure, look, this measure, there's 2 different chords, right? But here, what do we got? We've got B. Look, here's that D sharp again. That should clue us into something. What should the D sharp be telling us here? It's some kind of dominant chord in E minor, right? So as soon as we see the leading tone of the key we're in, that's some kind of dominant chord. And so for us, we're thinking this is going to be either 5 or what? 7. 5 or 7. And in this case, it's 5, right? So I'm just going to write, boom, right there. I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to fix that E flat, which just is so pesky, right? I've always said that about E flat, the peskiest of all the notes. But let's look really quickly just because I know there's some sticklers out there. What am I missing? I've got B, D sharp, and B. What note am I missing? I'm missing F sharp. But thankfully, I'm not actually missing it because where is it? It's in the right hand. So I'm just going to give a quarter rest there because we don't care. But then up here, nice, happy. I'll put it in the right octave because, again, I just want to be really clear so you can see exactly where it came from. F sharp right there, right? So if we were labeling this, right here it's 1, and then it's just big old 5, right? Cool. So that's the first line. Nothing complicated about the harmony here. If I look at this, it's 1, then to 5, 4, 3, then to 1, then to 5, 6, then to 1, then to 5, right? And the thing that should give away for us how close to 1, how close to home we are on that whole line is how many D sharps there are. That's the leading tone of E minor. That's what's keeping us pointed towards E minor. So let's go down to the second line. What is going on here? First of all, there it's gone, thankfully. Okay, so let's go down here into the second line. We start with a familiar shape, right, in the left hand. E, B, G, B. So look, and it's the whole measure. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that there for the whole measure, right? And we'll label that as 1 in just a second here because we know that's 1, no doubt about it, right? But now let's get to the second measure. What do we think about this? First and foremost, how many different chords are there in this measure? There's only 1 chord in that measure. Again, there's 8 different notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But how many different notes are there? Again, there's 3. C, A, E. And then it just repeats. C, A, E, A, C, A, E, A. I'm going to go on tour. That's going to be my thing. C, A, E, A, C, A, E, A. I think that's a winning formula, right? So we've got C, we've got A, we've got E. Those are the only notes that are actually happening here. So let's put that down. This idea of making a reduction is so helpful because it makes things so very clear for us, right? So what I'm going to do, let's come here. Let's see what's going on. What do we think? C, we got C, A, E. What's the root of that? C, A, E. Is C the root? If C was the root, we would need a third above C. What's a third above C? It's E. We've got that. Ooh, looking good. Then what would we need? What's our last note if C's the root? It'd be a C, E, G chord. Crap. Well, that's not right. Instead, we've got A. Where does A go in this? It's the root, right? Because A up a third is C, C up a third is E. So A is the root. So if A is the root here in the key of E minor, if A is the root here in the key of E minor, what are we going to call this? It's a 4 chord, right? If A is the root in the key of E minor, this is a 4 chord. Am I done, though? Is it a root position 4 chord? No, it's not. C, the third of the chord, is in the root, or is in the bass, excuse me. So what do I say? It's 4, 6, right? So that's a 4, 6 chord here in E minor, right? Absolutely wonderful 4, 6 chord. Awesome. Now, we've said all along, we're only looking at the left or the right hand, when we need help. We haven't needed help at all this line, so life is good. So let's go to the next one. Now, right away, what should stand out to us about this next measure in the left hand? Which of those notes should really jump out to us? Not because of, kind of what it is, but in a sense, because of what it isn't. Which of these notes in the left hand, in a normal run-of-the-mill E minor moment, would we expect to sharply jump out at us? We made a whole big deal up here about D sharp pointing us back to E minor. But if we look down here, what kind of D note do we have? D natural, which very much does not point us towards E minor, excuse me. And if we go there, here's the previous measure. This is measure 6. Does that sound like we are in Jeepers Creepers. Does that sound like we're in E minor? No, it doesn't. It sounds a whole lot like I just said, we're in not E minor, we're in a major key. Listen to how happy that is. Happy. Wow, life is so good, right? So the fact that we don't have D sharp, the leading tone of E minor, it means that we are no longer in that key. Leading tones keep us in the key. And the absence of a leading tone suggests that we've gone elsewhere, right? And here, the absence of D sharp, D natural, tells us we're not in E minor anymore. So that means that this cadence here at the end of this line is in a different key. We had, look at this last chord, G. That means we've gone to G major, right? We're in G major. I'm going to write cadence in G major. Whoops, major. Cadence in G major, right? How could I tell that that was a cadence in G major? How do you think I could tell that? Well, we end on a G chord, right? Right here, we've got G, we've got G, we've got B. We're actually missing D, but, it's pretty safe to assume that the note that we would have here is D natural, right? Why am I assuming that D natural is the note that I would have there? Well, first of all, it's not going to be D sharp because we just had D natural, right? D sharp, like next to D natural, would be a very big surprise, and that's not something that you would want to leave out, right? If the whole point of the moment is, hey, you know what? We are actually using D sharp, you wouldn't think that you should just not include that note. So that's hint number 1. You're not going to leave out an important key sort of defining note like that. Also, you're also not going to leave out the root of the chord, because what's the other chord that could have G and B in it? It would be like an E minor chord, right? We've used them a lot, E, G, B. You're not going to leave the root of the chord out. That doesn't make any sense, right? So if we think about that, when we get to that moment and all we have is G and B, if we get there, right? You're coming from this cadence. Someone could be listening and say, oh my goodness, I love that cadence in major. And you say, oh, but what you don't realize is that this happy sounding chord is actually deep sadness. That doesn't work. You can't hide a minor chord in this very clearly major moment, right? That's not how that works. So you can't leave out the root of the chord. That's not how that works. So instead, we just assume that the 5th is the note that has been omitted because that's the least structural note in the whole chord. You need the root to tell you its function, and you need the 3rd to tell you its color, right? So we've got the root for function, and we've got the 3rd for color, major, right? So we think we're on a G major chord here. So our big question is this a cadence in G major, or is it another key that could have G as the cadence point? Well, to do that, we've got to say, okay, what chords can be at a cadence? right? And what do you think the answer is? Well, we've only got two kinds of cadences, right? What are our types of cadences? We've got the authentic cadence, and we've got the half cadence. What kind of chord is it on an authentic cadence? It's, I keep writing 9 instead of parentheses. It's 1. What kind of chord is it at a half cadence? It's 5. So those are our only two cadence options. Those are the only two, right? That's sort of, why do you think that's the case? Why are cadences so restricted? Because it's the point that we need to suggest and clearly say, this idea is over, right? That's why, like in a book, how do you know that the chapter's over? Because it ends, there's a blank half a page, and then the next chapter starts, and it says, chapter 13, right? That's what a cadence is doing. It's saying, this chapter is over. Right? In this music, remember, we're not learning about like experimental music right now. We can't just say, oh, you didn't realize that the chapter ended here? I just didn't tell you. It just kept going. No. We want to clearly be able to communicate to our listeners when things are happening. Just like in movies. How do we clearly communicate that we're in a new scene? It fades to black and then opens up again, right? We have these structural aspects in all of our forms. We just don't often point them out because to us it's so obvious. How did I know that scene was over? Oh, there was a black screen in between, and then it opened up again, right? Same thing here. How do I know if this phrase is over? That's how you know, because I flub that. Isn't that beautiful? Aren't you so glad you're watching this? So, we know we're cadencing on either 1 or 5, right? So, the question is, if we're not convinced that we're in G major, then this would have to be a 5 chord. And what key is G major a 5 chord in? C major. G is 5 of C, right? So, how can we prove to ourselves? How can we prove that we are not in C major? Well, what would we need to see that's different between E minor and C major? The key signature is different, right? So the presence of F sharp here, right? The presence of F sharp all throughout this measure, right? There's 2 right there. That tells us that we are not in C major. Instead, we're in G major, and this is a 1 chord. This is a 1 chord in G major. What's the other thing that helps us know that we're in G major? D is 5 of G, right? So we've got all these things here that are pointing us to G major. So if that's the case, what we need to do is go backwards and say, crap, when did that happen? When did we move into G major? Right? And so here's something that I want to point out. We've already figured out that we know that right here, let me write the bass notes here. I haven't written this in yet. We've got this in the left hand, D, A, C. We're missing a note, but I already pointed it out. We've got F sharp up there. So let me write that F sharp in. Oh, that is a high F sharp. You're getting your money's worth with that F sharp, right? There's our F sharp. And so we know that right here, this is 5, and I'm going to write it's 5/7 of G major, and so many of us would know to write this is, oops, I haven't written anything in, so it's not letting me. Let me write this here. This is quarter note. This is 1, right? So we've got 5 going to 1, right? Now, many of us would leave it just like this and say, look, we were in E minor, everything was good, so we got these lowercase things, awesome, 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 and then we get a 5/1 in G major at the end. Voila. But the question is, in that way of writing it, where did the key change happen? Where did the modulation happen? Right? Modulations happen over the course of the music. There is a chord which is our pivot between the old key and the new key. right? I think of it sometimes like a portal, right? You have to go through the portal to get into the new key, or think of it like a window, right? If you open up a window, where does inside stop and outside begin? Think about that. If you open a window, where does the inside stop and the outside begin? There's a point where you're kind of both inside and outside. Right? If you open up a window and you sit in that window with one leg hanging inside and one leg hanging outside, are you inside or outside? You can get bit by bugs, so I'm saying you're outside, but you can also see the TV, you're inside. You're in both places at once. Same thing here. The pivot chord is in both keys at once. So the modulation doesn't happen when no one's looking, right? I had some people writing some things that made it seem like they were looking for the modulation to happen like here in no man's land, or almost sometimes I had it like right there. I can't make it as tiny as I want it to, like right on that measure line where we just, now we're there, right? But that's not how it works. Modulation has to occur on a chord. That's our building material. That's how we make music, with these chords. So I can't have progression and do something like this. I can't be going, here's this second line. The music can't be going. Okay, everybody close your eyes. Okay, now open them. Look, we're in major. That's not how it works, right? We hear what's going on, and so there's a chord that's in both keys at the same time. And the question for us is, how do we find that chord? Where does the modulation actually happen if there isn't this magical moment where it just sneaks right in, right? Like right in this empty space here. No. It happens in and amongst the music, right? The music is the thing that does it. Modulation isn't an extra thing that we do on top of the music. It's part of the music, as much as these chords are the music, right? So that's our question. Where does the modulation happen? Which chord is doing the work of pivoting between the old key and the new key? So how do we figure that out? Number one, we want to make sure that we know which chords are shared between these two keys. We started in E minor. We're going to G major. That's a lot of chords that are going to be the same, right? What's the one note that really functionally changes or is different between these two keys? It's the note D. We talked about it a lot. D natural is the kind of note that is used in G major, but look up here when we were in E minor so clearly. D sharp, right? So it's not going to be a chord that has D or D sharp in it because that's so different. Instead, it's a chord that has only shared notes. So that's number one. Number two, we want to remember that the pivot chord always happens. So let me add this on here. The pivot chord always happens. Pivot chord, or I'm going to write should always be immediately before what? It should be immediately before the dominant in the new key. Okay. So the modulation, to help us find that, we know that the pivot chord should always be immediately before the dominant chord in the new key. So here, what's our new key and what's our old key? Our old key is E minor. What's our new key? Our new key is G major. So, what's the dominant of G major? Oh, it's this nice little D7 chord, right? It's the chord that sounds like it wants to cadence to G, right? So if this is our dominant in G major, where do we find the pivot chord? It's right before it. The pivot chord is the chord right before the dominant in the new key. It's this, A, C, E, Is the ACE chord, is that shared between E minor and G major? It absolutely is. It's, look, it's 4-6 or 4 in E minor, and it's shared with G major. What do we call the A minor chord? What do we call ACE in the key of G major? We call it 2. Let me just write that there. Look, it's 2. Let me just bump this up a little bit. This drives me crazy when it hides down there. There we go. Look at that. It's 2. Now, I know, just ignore this crazy line here. We're gonna pretend it's not there. What do we need to do though? What's not finished here yet? We still, look, it's obscured a little bit, but let me zoom. Remember, this is a 4-6 chord, right? So, can this chord, we know it's a magical chord already because look, you can't tell, but this chord is pivoting between the keys. We can't even tell. That's the beauty of it. Oh, it's subtly taking us into G major. So it's magical, but it's not magical enough that it could be in one key an inverted chord while being root position in the other key. No. If it's inverted in one key, my font, let me change my font. If it's inverted in one key, it's inverted in the other key. Why? There you go. 2-6, right? So if it's inverted in one key, it's inverted in the other. There's no magic that it all of a sudden becomes root position just because it's in the other key, right? That's a very important point. All right, cool. So there we go. We got that. Look at that. So we started in E minor, and we could tell we were in E minor because we had all those D sharpie things. And then in the second line, right, the pivot, we're on this chord. And then we pivot to the dominant of G major. The thing to prove to us, the thing that we can do to prove that this is a pivot that's being used in both keys at once is I could, if we followed this chord up, we could get all the way to here, right? We could get here. And I could change this. Or Haydn could have changed it. I can't change it. Look, I'm going to do something bad. I'm going to say, you know what, Haydn? Not so convinced. And I could change the music here. And I'm going to make this a 5 chord. Let me do it like this. Change that. Oh, my goodness. There you go. A 5 chord. I'm going to change the rhythm here just so that we're going to see if this worked. No, it didn't work. That was terrible. Oh, my goodness. Oh, no. This is what I get for trying to help people. Let's see what happens if I put 5. Beautiful. Okay. Look, I'm going to say, you know what? These notes were fine. These notes were nice, but I'm going to use these notes now. I'm going to play this line, and when I get here, we're going to go into the sort of alternate dimension where Haydn doesn't modulate to G major. So here we go. You tell me, where's the last moment that I could decide to not go into G? Right? I made it all the way here. If I play this in slow motion, I could get here, literally here, and you will not know which key I'm going into, right? Let me go in slow motion. Am I going to stay in E minor, or I want to be happy, right? That's the idea. This chord is the window into both of these keys. This chord is a part. Let me undo all the stuff I just did. Undo. All my mistakes. If only were that easy, right? Gimme. Nice. Okay, sweet. This chord is the pivot between them. The pivot doesn't happen here because it takes this chord as part of the progression to keep it going, right? Okay, let's go to the next phrase. We're going to try to go a little faster here. We're just going to get through this next modulation. Okay, so first and foremost, a couple people got a little confused and immediately said, okay, well, we did that. We got to G major. It ends in E minor, so we're back in E minor. No, because again, look, you cannot be in a new key between here. You can't modulate between here and here, right? When we're playing this, see if I can get it so we can see it all. Like if we go from this ending, there is no time in between here and here, right? So you can't modulate in between those lines. The modulation happens in the course of the music because we need a chord to be our pivot between the two keys, right? Just like a modulation doesn't happen on the bar line in between two measures, it doesn't happen between lines. The modulation is a chord progression, right? The pivot chord is a chord that takes us. So we're still in G major because we cadenced in G major. And we will be in G major until we get a pivot chord and then a cadence in a new key, right? Those are the two necessary elements. A pivot chord takes us into the new key, and a cadence confirms that we've made it into a new key. So here we are. We're in G major. Let's go back to just sort of remembering how to do this. So I'm in the treble clef here, so I'm going to write up on the the upper line. That's not as high, right? We got G, B, D, and then look, the rest of the thing, it's the same notes. There's 8 different notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or there's 8 notes, but there's only 3 different ones, right? So let me write in, see if this works. Yes, good. We got that. Let me do this one. What do we got here? C, E, G. How many chords are there going to be in this measure? Look, it's the same pattern twice. That's one chord. There's only 3 different notes. C, G, E, G, C, G. Oh, it's all the same. So look, here we go. Boom. So we can do those really quick. And then let's do this one next. How many different chords are there in this measure? It's the same pattern twice. So it's only one chord. And look, there's only 3 different notes. A, F sharp, C. F sharp again, A again, F sharp again, C again, F sharp again, right? So it's only 3 different notes. So let me pop that down here. Boom. So let's go through these. We're in G major. See what we can figure out. I'm going to come down to the bottom here and see if it'll be happy. So we're in G major. This is a G, B, D chord. It's not happy. How do I make this work? Ooh, this is terrible. I don't like this at all. Let me do something I don't want to do. Edit, undo. Sorry, everybody. I know you've invested all this time and now just to see me just in such a state of disrepair here. It's awful. Let's put a treble clef up there. Nope. Let's put a treble clef up there. I'm terrified to know what's going on there and why I can't put a treble clef in this measure. I love it. Oh, just go. We're going with it, everybody. We don't care. We're going with it. Okay, let's put 1, 6. Wow, what a journey to get there. We're in G major, remember? We got 1, 6. Awesome. What's this next thing? It's C, E, G, and we're in the key of G major. It's a C major chord. That's 4, right? Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, what's this next one? This is a little more complicated, so we're going to try to figure this out. So here we go. What are the notes that we've got here? We got A. We've got C. That's a third, so we're thinking maybe this is an ACE chord. Is this an ACE chord? No, there's no E here. No E here. Instead, there's an F sharp. Where could F sharp go in this? F sharp is a third below A. F sharp, A, C, right? So if we're in G major, which we are, let's just remind ourselves of that. We're in G major now, right? Why are we in G major now, by the way? We're in G major because we cadenced in G major, right? So here we are. We're in G major. We have an F sharp, A, C chord. What do we call the F sharp chord in G major? It's 7. And this happens to be a 7. Oh, let's see if this is going to work. 7, 6 chord, right? This is a 7, 6 chord. Yeah? Now, let's look ahead. So that was really fast. Good for us. And we didn't even have to use the right hand at all. That's best case scenario. As a left-handed person, right hand's less good than you might think. Okay, so let's look here in this measure. What note in this last measure of the line here should jump out of the page into your brain? It's D sharp. Back from the dead. Why is D sharp so important? Where's it trying to take us? D sharp is trying to take us to E. Oh no, it's trying to take us away from G major. Is G major that great? That's for you to decide. Reply in the comments. So we've got D sharp. That suggests that this is what kind of chord in relationship to E minor? It suggests that it's a dominant chord. So let me write right here. I'm going to put a B major chord because we've got, and I'm actually going to make it, yeah, I'm going to do that. Yes, let's respell it because that's my favorite pastime. There you go. B, D sharp, F sharp, right? Booyah. So now, we know that B, D sharp, F sharp, that's what in E minor? If we were in E minor again, what would that be? It's 5 of E minor. Wow. 5 of E minor. And let's look. By the end of this sucker, we are in E minor. We end on this nice, dark, cadence in E minor. We're going home, people. We're going back, right? So if this is the dominant of E minor, that's significant because, remember, we're in G major now. So if I ask you, at this point, what are we considering the old key? It's G major. We are in G major. The old key is the key we're in. And we are in G major. What's the new key that we're trying to go to? It's E minor, right? Even though this piece is in E minor can still be the new key because we're currently in G, right? We're in the key of G major. Let's listen. That's pretty happy. Oops, sorry. Right? We're here. And this sounds like, where's it trying to go? It sounds like it's going to do this. Right? It sounds like it wants to be in G major. Who doesn't want to be in G major? Haydn, that's who. He wants to go to E minor because he's got a dark, dark, dark soul, right? So we're going, our new key is E minor, right? Even though it's the home key, in this modulation, it's the new key. And what did we say? What's the significance of knowing that we've got a 5 of E minor, the dominant of E minor, and E minor is the new key? What happens after a pivot chord? The dominant of the new key. Here's a big old 5 chord. That's the dominant of the new key. What happens before the dominant of the new key? It's a pivot. A pivot chord happens before the dominant of the new key. And remember, just like we said before, it's not this tiny little, I can't swing this. I want to make it vertical. It's not the bar line. That's the pivot point. Look, it's the notes. It's the chord. This is the pivot, right? Let's be egregious with this. Let's be egregious. I'm spelling things crazy because why not, right? This is the pivot. This is the pivot. All of this is the pivot, right? The chord. and I'm going to write the music is the pivot. Not anything else. The chord and the music are the pivot, right? The pivot doesn't happen in the bar line. It doesn't happen in an empty space. It's the chord that pivots. That's the beauty of it, right? So if the pivot happens before the dominant of the new key, here's the dominant of the new key, where should we be looking for our pivot? Right before it, right here. Is F sharp, A, C shared between G major and G major and E minor? It absolutely is, right? So here we go. We were here. Let's do this. So this is shared. This is our pivot point, right? This is our pivot point because it's shared and it's right before the dominant of the new key. What is F sharp A C in the key of E minor? It's 2, 6, right? And this is where, oh boy, that is just ugly as sin. We're just going to live with it though, right? 2, 6. You see that? That's 2, 6. It's both of these. It's 7 in G and it's 2 in E minor. It's both at once. That's the idea of pivoting. It's the window. Is it inside, staying in the old key, or is it outside, going to the new key? Both, right? When we get to that moment, we don't know which key we're in. We could be in either one because when you're hanging out that window, it's a nice day. Why not hang out the window? Right? I'm hanging out the window. You don't know if I'm coming back in or I'm going outside. I'm going outside, obviously. We're quarantined. I'm going outside, right? So that's the pivot chord. Now, last thing that I want to add here. I'm not going to go through the rest of it because I think you got it. But last thing that I have forgotten to do is at the modulation, what do I need to clearly indicate? I need to indicate what the new key is. What key the rest of this analysis is using, right? So here I should have written E minor. This is a 2-6 chord in E minor. Just like over here at our first modulation, I should have written right here G and put it right here. Now, that's important. Okay, that was a lot. I know that was long. Congrats to you if you stuck with it. But being able to analyze piano music in this way and really find not that we do modulate, but where the pivot is critical. Critical, critical, critical. All right, thanks, everybody.